One of the things you mentioned earlier on was about who holds the power, how do they get the power, and the means from which that process takes place. So you talked about people that worked at went to golf clubs and stuff like that. Could you elaborate on that for us, please?
Sure. I did my earlier work in the financial services sector, and I interviewed a lot of executives. So it's not surprising that most of them are white men from Oxford or Cambridge, and they have very narrow education in terms of schooling, so you don't get much diversity at the very top. And I was very curious how these people end up getting to these privileged positions, because they don't represent the diversity of talent that we have today. If you look at a level below, there is actually a bottleneck. There is a huge diversity at the middle level of management in the UK, but many people cannot make it through. One of the silent contributors to this is class. For example, in terms of hobbies, sports, choice of even clothing and food can influence the decisions. We attribute different value to different ways of being and being seen. And in order to capture this kind of sophistication in how people access privilege, I suggested in my research that we should start looking at the top, the privileged positions, and look at the mechanisms by which they get there. What are their sources of power? Why do we always, for example, choose people from certain schools? And how their being from those schools help them get to those positions? Without unpacking privilege, we cannot really understand disadvantage, because we are trying to promote people with disadvantage to similar positions, but we are not tackling privilege per se. So we need to problematize privilege as well as pushing people up. We need to also question how people achieve unearned privilege. So there are two kinds. Earned privileges are through education, skill, what you do, experience, your contribution to organization, your competencies. But there are unearned privileges. For example, in the class in which you are born, we still don't have any laws in Britain to contest class-based discrimination.
Well, the last job was warehouse job down in Hemel Hempstead, and £6 an hour, £6.45 an hour. Yeah. And initially, when we were given the job, it was given on the premise of full 40 hours, permanent contract. So I took the job, even though it was really forced on me with the threat of sanctions on my dole. But so I took the job, started the job, first few weeks, 40 hours a week, constant, regular. Then for the fourth week, you get a text in the morning, sorry, not required.
So when you started the job, what were they telling you about it? Did they say there'd be a permanent job further down the line? Or?
Well, it was via a contract for an agency firm called Pertemp.
Yeah.
And that breaks down to permanent temporary. It's an abbreviation of the two words. Yeah. And so that company actually permanently employs temporary people. Yeah. So the job eventually petered down to a temporary part-time contract. Right. So towards the end of it, I was getting texts 4 times a week saying you're not required.
Right.
And then on the Friday I get a phone call saying, oh, can you come in to do a shift? 1 day's work. And I'm meant to live and pay my bills on 1 day's pay. And 1 day's wage is about £50. You can't live on that.
That's proper wage slavery though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's usury.
Yeah.
It's pure usury. And no consideration of my quality of life from the employer, the agency. They just think they can ring us up any time of the week. Oh yeah, come in today. Oh, we don't need you today. Come in today. Don't need you today. Complete usual.
Discuss unionisation or trying to
there was a union there, but
there was a union.
Yeah, there was a union there. Because you had a pressure. We had over 100 agency workers went through during that 6 months that I was there. Yeah. I managed the last 6 months, but most of them came, started, and left. Came, started, and left. And there was a continual herding of people in. Over a 6-month period. That was used, pure use. And £6.45 isn't a living. It's not a living wage. No, not at all. You can't make a life out of that. And then when you break down the hours and start getting only 2-3 hours a day, a week, you can't plan for the future. No. You're only just about living to the next week to see if you've got enough, so you can keep on going back to get you £40 to go back there to earn the two. It was terrible.
But somebody was making a lot of money out of your
someone. Oh yeah. Just the agency are paying who we were working. Well, no, the company are paying the agency, and the agency are getting a lot more than £6.45 for every hour I work. They're probably getting at least another £5 on top of that. So every hour I work, the agency's just sitting there getting £5, and there were a lot of us there.
One of the things that you guys have been talking about on your way through has been about the 0-hour contracts and the scandal behind that. Why is it important that we fight against the spectre of 0-hour contracts?
Well, while we're at the TUC Congress House in Great Russell Street, just around the corner from Tottenham Court Road, a woman turned up who supported us, who was giving out leaflets saying that the TUC itself is farming young people out for 0-hour contracts to the firms, the private firms, and that is a real scandal, because the 0-hour contracts are the modern equivalent of what you had on the docks many years ago, you know, where you had to step up to the line, where they said, we'll have you, and the rest of you go home. And we've come a long way since then. We've fought and won rights like job security and holiday pay and sick pay and all the rest of it. You have nothing like that on 0-hour contracts. You have no rights at all. If they say to you, this week we want you to work 1 hour on Monday, 8 hours on Sunday and 3 hours on Wednesday, and you say, well, I can't, that's fine, no problem, we're not going to call you again. And we've found one case of 0-hour contracts down in Hackney at the refuse collection site, where they have to turn up people on these 0-hour contracts at 5-6 in the morning, and again they say, well, we'll have you, and then the rest of them are sent home, and they have to come back the next day to try and get work the next day. We say 0-hour contracts must be abolished. It's modern day slavery.
Yes, that is. I know that in the miners' pit strike of '84, it was possible to win. It wasn't doomed to failure, as some people thought, especially those in the press. We were very close on about 3 occasions. But what we lacked, without a doubt, was a second front. And not one single union, except the dockers, for just above a week, they came out on a justified pay claim, but it opened up a second front. And I can remember saying at the Durham Miners Rally, the sun is out, which it was, in July. The miners are out, and now the dockers are out. Because I knew that if this lasted for 2 or 3 weeks, we'll win. The sad thing was that the TUC didn't organise a second front. I mean, it was a year-long strike. Everybody had a wage claim. And although most unions were sending money, the truth was a second front would have suffered. They couldn't have handled that.
Well, that's one of the things we have at the minute. I mean, since 2010, a dozen or more unions have been on strike. No one's, except for one day of action that was called on November 30th a couple of years ago. There's not been any other coordinated attack, basically.
And that's what it has to be.
I mean, I've been at today's the 26th of March, and the NUT will be out on strike, and I went down, spoke there, I was asked to speak, and I explained about the importance of connecting the dots, because at the minute we have, hundreds of different issues affecting all people, from this ideological austerity, bedroom tax, there's loads of stuff going on. But we're all fighting on individual fronts and not coming together to actually say, we've got one common theme underpinning it all. Yeah. And it's this ideological austerity, because they bailed out the banks and now they're making us pay for it. And the thing I impressed on them today was about time, and not to wait for our union leaders to call stuff, not to wait for the TUC or rely on them to call something. Yeah. We should be doing things more commonly, more frequently, and banding together And that's why I think they've been passing these bills like the anti-social crime and policing bill, so they can disperse you through a nuisance from a locality.
Yeah, what I did in Parliament today when I voted against the benefit cap, the welfare benefit cap. That is all part of the process. And I went to meet the teachers and I saw the march. And it's because I look for extra parliamentary activity, because I know that being a Member of Parliament is not just voting. So today I've been involved in a ragged trousered philanthropist and given them a story of the present day ragged trouser philanthropist with 0-hour contracts, payday loans, food banks. That story is just written in different language. So I did that area. And then it was a teacher strike, and then the FBU, because I want to connect, as you say, all the dots. And then voted against the welfare benefit cap. Rebelled, there weren't many of us, 22 of them. But that's how I approach my life, and I always have done.
One of the things about class, particularly in the UK, I find is that there's been a concerted effort to convince people that they're not working class anymore. And a lot of, some of I mean, all the press, they have common agendas and themes and what works for them, whether they're centre-left or centre-right. But the common theme that they're selling is that the working class, no one's working class in a real middle class. And I think actually that's one of the biggest lies that's been sold to the public in helping them win their position, is that you're no longer working class, and it's almost like it's a dirty word to consider yourself to be working.
Absolutely. This is, I think the first lie they told us was that we live in a classless society. That was the first rubbish I heard about Britain. Then the second one was that we are mostly now middle class. The reason they are doing that is the international research, which shows that only social movements only happen in countries where there is a narrow band of middle class. That's why we are going to see more social movements around wealth redistribution in Britain, because these issues are not addressed. We don't discuss wealth redistribution. Rich are getting richer through the process of networking and other privileged means. And they have the best political representation at the moment in the UK. The current political regime is very friendly. The previous one, even the Labour, was very friendly with the corporate elite. So we are seeing that the working class voice is diminished.
They're now trying to recover from that recession by, basically trying to make sure that they reduce wages even further, they make people insecure in work, and at the same time they exploit for harder. They're also trying to start the debt bubble going again, lending people. So what we're seeing at the moment is a slight rise, and they're calling it a massive recovery. It isn't, it's a slight rise in income overall. But it's a recovery for a selective group within society, the rich. It's a recovery for the corporations, a recovery for the rich. Most other people, they've suppressed their wages, they've made people insecure at work, they're working insecure hours, zero contracts and all the rest of it. So they're building the recovery by keeping that, if you like, working people on a breadline virtually for many people, and as a result of that being able to get what profits they can for redistribute to the rich.
Jesus will say fairness for everybody. You cannot give to one give what is onto Jesus, what is his, and what give to the people what is their right, what is their, not the banks taking away from the banks people's money. The banks are supposed to give back what rightfully belongs to the people, and fairness and justice should prevail. Otherwise, what is we are looking at so many things, so many people are going to be out of jobs, out of business. The banks are there to provide a service, and that service must be represented with fairness and justice.
Gareth Pierce, I'm a lawyer who is watching with horror as human rights entitlements that we thought were forever are under attack. But I've just been told that the firefighters are taking an extraordinary initiative in saying that they will not allow this country to depart from its obligations in relation to human rights, that we signed up to treaties in the wake of World War II that were meant to be permanent and for all individuals at all times to enjoy inalienable human rights. And it's a terrifying concept that we have a government at this time that's talking about withdrawing from the European Court of Human Rights. How can it do that? It can't do it without withdrawing from the European community as a whole, the Council of Europe, which embraces 40 countries, and it can't do it without contemplating withdrawing from the United Nations, because after all it's the same obligations we've signed up to as a member of the United Nations. But for the firefighters to be battling too, with all of their strength and solidarity and the respect they command, is extraordinarily important. So we thank you for that.
I'll give you two examples of where this government is being vicious and trying to stop you from having a right for striking. The RMT union in the London Underground, Cameron has clearly said in his next manifesto that he's thinking of putting in legislation there to stop the RMT from striking on the Underground. Now, that's our fundamental right to strike. And these are trying to deny that for thousands of workers, and it won't just stop with the RMT, as you know, it will spread across all of us. So we won't even have the right to work. And I urge you to go back into your workplaces, speak to your colleagues who are not out here today. They're probably not members of the trade union, and you need to do a job of work and encourage those people to join the trade union, because there's no one else fighting their corner other than the trade union, unfortunately.
We're quite happy to look at change. We've had change all our life, Jeremy. Surely we're entitled to ask these questions as a trade union. I mean, we might as well pack up shop. If a trade union can't ask for safety at the workplace, safety to and from the workplace, decent pay, decent conditions, we might as well pack up as a trade union. It's taken us decades upon decades to get legislation in place to make sure our members do have proper place at workplace, and this crowd want to take them all away. When people join a trade union, in our view, they do for one thing and one thing only. Job security, being safe, best possible pay, best possible conditions, decent pensions, and a world that lives in peace. That's what we strive for. And if we're not going to put that on the agenda, who else is going to? Is the Labour Party going to put it on the agenda? Who's going to be our people out there in the street that's going to hold the banner for us if the trade union don't hold the banner?